Listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about success, wealth, and the power of your environment. 5 years ago, I was broke. Not just financially broke, but spiritually, mentally, and emotionally bankrupt. I was living in a cluttered apartment, surrounded by things that were literally stealing my future. I didn't even know it. Today, I'm sitting here as a multi-millionaire, and it all started with removing 5 simple things from my living space. Not adding things, not buying things, not collecting things, removing them. You see, most people think success comes from accumulation. They think wealth comes from gathering more stuff, more possessions, more things around them. They couldn't be more wrong. The secret to unlocking your true potential lies in subtraction, not addition. It lies in creating space, not filling it. And today I'm going to walk you through exactly what I removed from my house that transformed my entire existence and made me millions of dollars. But before I dive into these 5 life-changing removals, I need you to understand something fundamental about your environment. Your surroundings are not neutral. They're either working for you or against you. They're either elevating your consciousness and expanding your possibilities, or they're limiting your thinking and constraining your potential. There's no middle ground. Every single object in your space is either a catalyst for your success or an anchor holding you back. The first thing I removed from my house was the television. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just another anti-technology rant, hear me out. The television wasn't just a piece of equipment in my living room. It was a portal to mediocrity. Every single night, I would come home from work, collapse on my couch, and surrender my most valuable resource, my attention, to whatever programming someone else decided I should consume. Think about this for a moment. The average person watches over 4 hours of television per day. That's 28 hours per week. That's 144 hours per month. That's over 1,700 hours per year. Do you realize what 1,700 hours of focused attention could create in your life? Do you understand the empire you could build with that time? The skills you could develop? The relationships you could nurture? The business you could launch? But it's not just about the time. It's about what television does to your mind. It programs you to be a consumer, not a creator. It trains you to receive information passively instead of seeking it actively. It fills your subconscious with other people's dreams, other people's stories, other people's realities, leaving no room for your own vision to emerge. When I removed that television from my living room, something magical happened. Silence filled the space. At first, it was uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do with myself. But gradually, that silence became my greatest teacher. In that quiet space, I started hearing my own thoughts again. I started remembering dreams I had forgotten. I started imagining possibilities I had never considered. Without the constant noise and distraction of television, my mind became clear. I started reading again. Not just casual reading, but deep, transformative books that challenged my thinking and expanded my awareness. I started writing down my ideas instead of letting them slip away into the entertainment void. I started having conversations with myself about what I really wanted to create in my life. That television removal was the first domino in a chain reaction that would completely transform my existence. Because when you remove one source of distraction, you suddenly become aware of all the other things that are stealing your focus and diluting your power. The second thing I removed was even more radical, and it's something that most people would find absolutely terrifying to eliminate from their lives. I removed my bed from the bedroom. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds crazy, maybe even unhealthy, but let me explain the profound psychology behind this decision and how it revolutionized my relationship with sleep, rest, and productivity. Most people use their bedroom as an escape pod. It becomes this sanctuary where they retreat from life, from challenges, from growth. The bed becomes a symbol of comfort, and comfort becomes the enemy of achievement. When your bedroom is too comfortable, too inviting, too easy to retreat to, it becomes incredibly difficult to push through those moments when life gets challenging. I replaced my traditional bed with a simple floor mat and a thin cushion. Suddenly, sleep became intentional rather than indulgent. I could no longer collapse into comfort whenever things got difficult. I could no longer use my bed as a hiding place from the work I needed to do. This simple change forced me to confront discomfort head-on, and in doing so, I developed an incredible tolerance for the temporary pain that all success requires. But here's the deeper transformation that happened. When comfort was no longer my default option, I started seeking challenge instead. When hiding in my bedroom was no longer appealing, I started facing my problems directly. When sleeping became less attractive, I started finding energy and inspiration in the work itself. This might sound extreme, but I want you to think about the most successful people you know or have studied. How many of them are known for their comfort-seeking behaviors? How many of them built their empires by retreating into cozy spaces? Success demands a certain level of controlled discomfort, a willingness to do what others won't do, to push beyond what feels natural and easy. By removing the traditional bed from my bedroom, I wasn't just changing where I slept. I was rewiring my entire relationship with comfort and challenge. I was training my nervous system to find satisfaction in growth rather than in retreat. And this single change began attracting opportunities into my life that I had never imagined possible. The third removal was perhaps the most psychologically significant, and it's something that touches every single person listening to this. I removed all mirrors from my house except for one small mirror in the bathroom for basic hygiene. This might sound strange, even vain or impractical, but the impact this had on my self-concept and my focus was absolutely revolutionary. The mirrors do something insidious to our consciousness. They keep us trapped in self-obsession and external validation. Every time you pass a mirror, part of your attention goes to evaluating your appearance, judging your image, comparing yourself to some ideal you have in your mind. This might seem harmless, but these micro moments of self-valuation add up to hours of mental energy that could be directed toward your goals and dreams. When I removed the mirrors, something incredible happened to my self-awareness. Instead of being constantly concerned with how I looked, I became intensely focused on how I felt and what I was creating. Instead of seeking validation from my reflection, I started seeking validation from my results. Instead of being distracted by my image, I became laser-focused on my impact. This removal taught me one of the most important lessons about success. Your relationship with yourself must be based on your actions, not your appearance. Your self-worth must come from your contribution, not your reflection. When you stop looking at yourself in mirrors throughout the day, you start looking at the world with fresh eyes. You start seeing opportunities instead of flaws. You start noticing solutions instead of problems. The psychological shift was profound. Without constant visual reminders of my physical self, I started identifying more with my mind, my creativity, my potential. I stopped being a body with thoughts and started being a consciousness with a body. This shift in identity was crucial because how you see yourself determines what you believe is possible for your life. Moreover, removing mirrors eliminated one of the biggest sources of procrastination and delay in my daily routine. No more standing in front of mirrors trying to perfect my appearance. No more getting lost in self-evaluation when I should have been taking action. No more comparing my reality to some idealized image in my head. Just pure, focused movement toward my goals. The fourth thing I removed from my house was all clocks, except for one alarm clock by my bedside. This removal transformed my relationship with time and productivity in ways I never could have anticipated. Most people are slaves to time, constantly checking clocks, worrying about schedules, feeling pressured by the artificial urgency that timekeeping creates. When you remove clocks from your environment, you start operating on natural rhythms instead of artificial pressures. You start working based on energy and inspiration rather than arbitrary time blocks. You start eating when you're hungry instead of when the clock says it's mealtime. You start resting when you're tired instead of when society says you should sleep. This doesn't mean I became irresponsible with commitments or deadlines. Instead, I became more intentional about how I structured my day. Without constant time pressure, I could focus completely on whatever task was in front of me. I could dive deep into projects without the anxiety of time passing. I could enter flow states that were previously impossible when I was constantly monitoring the clock. The removal of clocks also eliminated one of the biggest sources of stress in modern life, the feeling that there's never enough time. When you're not constantly reminded of time passing, you start feeling abundant instead of scarce. You start approaching your work with patience instead of panic. You start making decisions based on quality instead of speed. This single change improved my creativity exponentially. Some of my best ideas came during long, uninterrupted periods where I had no awareness of time passing. Some of my most profitable projects were born during sessions where I was completely immersed in the work without any temporal distractions. But perhaps most importantly, removing clocks taught me to value presence over productivity. Instead of constantly thinking about what I needed to do next, I started fully engaging with what I was doing now. This presence enhanced everything: my relationships, my work quality, my decision-making, my overall satisfaction with life. The fifth and final removal was the most counterintuitive of all, and it's something that challenges everything our consumer culture teaches us about success and happiness. I removed all decorative objects from my house, all artwork, all ornaments, all decorative furniture, all aesthetic items that serve no functional purpose. I turned my living space into what some might call sterile, but what I discovered was actually a sanctuary of pure potential. Decorative objects are visual noise. They compete for your attention even when you're not consciously looking at them. Your subconscious mind is constantly processing all the visual information in your environment, and every unnecessary object is using up mental bandwidth that could be directed toward your goals and dreams. When I stripped away all the decorative elements from my house, the mental clarity was immediate and profound. My thoughts became sharper, my focus became laser-like, my creativity exploded. Without visual distractions competing for my attention, my mind could fully engage with whatever I was working on. But the deeper transformation was philosophical. Removing decorative objects forced me to find beauty and satisfaction in function rather than form. I started appreciating the elegance of simplicity, the power of emptiness, the potential that exists in uncluttered space. I learned to derive pleasure from the work itself rather than from the things that surrounded the work. This removal also eliminated the psychological burden of maintenance and care that comes with possessions. No more dusting decorative items. No more ranging and rearranging objects. No more worrying about things getting damaged or stolen. All that mental energy was freed up for productive, creative, wealth-generating activities. The empty walls and clean surfaces became canvases for my imagination. Instead of looking at static artwork, I started visualizing dynamic possibilities. Instead of being surrounded by other people's creative expressions, I started expressing my own creativity through my work and my projects. Now, you might be wondering, how did these 5 removals actually make me millions of dollars? The connection isn't immediately obvious, but it's absolutely profound. Each of these removals created space, physical space, mental space, emotional space, spiritual space, and in that space, possibilities began to emerge that had been previously hidden by clutter, distraction, and unnecessary complexity. Without television consuming my evenings, I started a side business that eventually became my primary source of income. The 28 hours per week I reclaimed became the foundation of my financial empire. I used that time to learn new skills, develop products, build relationships, and create value in the marketplace. Without a comfortable bed to retreat to, I developed an incredible work ethic and persistence. When challenges arose in my business, I couldn't just escape to comfort. I had to face problems head-on and find solutions. This resilience became one of my greatest assets as an entrepreneur. Without mirrors constantly pulling my attention to my appearance, I became completely focused on my performance. Every ounce of energy went toward creating results instead of managing my image. This laser focus accelerated my progress exponentially. Without clocks creating artificial urgency, I could work in deep productive states for extended periods. The quality of my work improved dramatically, which directly translated into higher value in the marketplace. My products and services became premium offerings because they were created with patience and presence rather than hurried anxiety. Without decorative objects cluttering my visual field, my mind became a clean slate for innovation and creativity. Some of my most profitable ideas emerged from the mental clarity that came with environmental simplicity. But beyond the practical benefits, these removals created something even more valuable. They transformed my identity. I stopped being someone who consumed and started being someone who created. I stopped being someone who collected and started being someone who contributed. I stopped being someone who accumulated possessions and started being someone who accumulated value. The psychological shift was the real foundation of my financial success. When your environment supports growth rather than comfort, when your space encourages creation rather than consumption, when your surroundings promote focus rather than distraction, success becomes inevitable. These 5 removals taught me that wealth isn't about having more things, it's about needing fewer things. True abundance comes from internal richness rather than external accumulation. Real security comes from your ability to create value rather than your ability to acquire possessions. Now, I want to address the skepticism that some of you might be feeling right now. You might be thinking that these changes are too extreme, too radical, too uncomfortable to implement in your own life. You might be wondering if such drastic measures are really necessary for success. Let me tell you something that took me years to understand. Extraordinary results require extraordinary methods. If you want to live like most people live, do what most people do. But if you want to achieve what most people never achieve, you have to be willing to do what most people would never do. The average person surrounds themselves with comfort, distraction, and unnecessary complexity. The average person fills their space with objects that make them feel good temporarily, but keep them trapped in mediocrity permanently. The average person chooses easy over effective, comfortable over productive, familiar over transformative. The average person chooses easy over effective. The average person chooses easy over transformative. Every single time but you're not here because you want to be average. You're here because you want to unlock your extraordinary potential. And extraordinary potential requires extraordinary commitment to growth over comfort, to challenge over ease, to simplicity over complexity. Each of these removals created what I call productive discomfort, a controlled challenge that forces growth and development. When you remove television, you create discomfort around entertainment that forces you to find more meaningful ways to spend your time. When you remove your comfortable bed, you create discomfort around rest that forces you to find energy and motivation in your work itself. When you remove mirrors, you create discomfort around vanity that forces you to find identity in your actions rather than your appearance. This productive discomfort is the catalyst for all meaningful change in your life. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Ease is the enemy of strength. Convenience is the enemy of character. If you want to develop extraordinary capabilities, you have to be willing to embrace extraordinary challenges. But here's what's beautiful about these removals. They're not sacrifices, they're investments. Every comfort you remove from your environment becomes power you add to your life. Every distraction you eliminate becomes focus you can direct toward your goals. Every unnecessary possession you release becomes mental space you can fill with possibilities. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it begins immediately. The moment you remove television from your living room, you reclaim those hours for productive activities. The moment you simplify your sleeping arrangements, you develop a stronger relationship with challenge and discomfort. The moment you eliminate visual distractions, you enhance your mental clarity and creative capacity. And the compound effect of these changes is absolutely staggering. Small environmental modifications create massive behavioral shifts. Minor adjustments in your physical space produce major transformations in your mental state. Simple removals generate sophisticated improvements in your performance and results. I want you to understand something crucial about your current living situation. Right now, your environment is perfectly designed to produce the results you're currently getting in your life. If you want different results, you need a different environment. If you want a different future, you need different surroundings. If you want to become a different person, you need to create a different space. This isn't just theory or philosophy, this is practical science. Environmental psychology has proven that our surroundings directly influence our behavior, our mood, our productivity, our creativity, and our overall performance. Your space is constantly programming your subconscious mind with messages about who you are and what's possible for your life. When your space is cluttered, your thinking becomes cluttered. When your environment is chaotic, your mind becomes chaotic. When your surroundings are filled with distractions, your attention becomes scattered. But when your space is clean, simple, and intentional, your thinking becomes clear, focused, and powerful. The 5 removals I implemented were not random or arbitrary. They were strategically designed to eliminate the most common sources of distraction, comfort seeking, and energy drain in modern life. Television represents passive consumption. Comfortable beds represent avoidance and retreat. Mirrors represent self-obsession and vanity. Clocks represent artificial pressure and anxiety. Decorative objects represent unnecessary complexity and maintenance. By removing these elements, I created an environment that naturally supported the behaviors and mindset necessary for success. Instead of fighting against my surroundings started working for me. Instead of having to overcome my environment started elevating me. This is the secret that most people never discover. Your external environment shapes your internal state more than your internal state shapes your external environment. If you want to change your life, start by changing your space. If you want to transform your results, start by transforming your surroundings. But transformation requires courage. It requires the willingness to let go of familiar comforts and embrace unfamiliar challenges. It requires the strength to choose growth over ease, potential over comfort, future over present convenience. Most people are not willing to make these choices. Most people prefer to stay comfortable rather than become powerful. Most people choose familiar limitation over unfamiliar possibility. And that's exactly why most people never achieve extraordinary results. But you have the opportunity to be different. You have the chance to make choices that most people won't make, to embrace challenges that most people avoid, to create an environment that most people would find too uncomfortable or too extreme. But the question is not whether these methods work. I have proven that they do through my own results and the results of others who have implemented similar approaches. The question is whether you're willing to trust the process enough to implement these changes in your own life. Change is never comfortable, especially in the beginning. Your mind will resist these removals. Your ego will protest the loss of familiar objects and arrangements. Your emotions will rebel against the temporary discomfort that comes with any meaningful transformation, because success is not your enemy, it's your teacher. Resistance is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that you're moving in the right direction. The things that feel most challenging to remove from your environment are often the things that are having the most limiting impact on your potential.